Hello, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. As we all know, or many of us know, Montgomery County is currently dealing with a very serious opioid crisis. Chuck Short, Special Assistant to the County Executive, is here to report on how the county and the leadership of the County Executive is working to address this terrible challenge. Maryland League of Women Voters, one of our favorite organizations, is currently advocating in Annapolis during the 2018 legislative session where it's putting forward its legislative agenda. Elaine Apter, the state co-president, is here to explain the league's agenda and to tell us whether or not they're going to get what they are looking for. The village concept, created to support aging in place, has spread across the nation. It becomes so important that the city of Rockville recently created a position of village facilitator a year ago to support the villages here in Rockville. Trish Evans, facilitator of the villages in Rockville, will tell us about how this is going 1 year into it. Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture opened its doors on the mall in 2016. It's become the most important, popular museum America has seen in decades. Fred Evans, celebrate the museum as he honors Dr. Martin Luther King as we, as a nation, salute his birthday next week. Chuck Short, welcome.
Hi, Don. Good to be back.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Happy New Year to you and your viewers.
Well, say hello to Charlie for us.
I will. Thanks.
Opioid crisis. I know this keeps the county executive up at night, worried about it. It keeps you up at night, our state's attorney, police, and the whole world. What's, in a nutshell, what's going on? Why do we have this opioid crisis?
Well, let me say first, from my seat in the county executive's office, I don't think I have ever experienced a more heart-wrenching issue than this crisis. We lost 84 people, 84 Montgomery Countyans last year to overdoses and opiate-related drugs. We get a lot of telephone calls. It seems that thousands of our residents know of, are friends with, former friends with people who have succumbed to this disease.
Because this is like a silently approaching killer, right? I mean, you get a knee injury or shoulder injury or something, you get pain medicine, and before you know it, you're hooked, and then they cut you off.
Yeah, it's an insidious disease. That's exactly right. You go in, you trust your doctor, you have a little minor surgery, they give you a pill, or unfortunately, too often, 2 weeks worth of pills, to try to make you feel better, and many end up with a problem.
And then you get hooked, and the only way you can turn to is heroin, which I guess is a cheaper alternative now and more available.
Well, fentanyl, which is available from China, which is sort of a synthetic form of heroin, if you will, best way to describe it. Very cheap stuff, comparatively speaking, and just being poured on the market from China. So these drugs are very, very readily available.
How does it?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm struck at how across age lines, culture lines, this has become. I have many sisters, and one had to go through the withdrawal process. She had chronic back pain, suffered as so many people do, and I watched her with this horrific addiction overcome that. And it was so challenging. So I'm just struck by how far-reaching it is.
Well, the amount of prescriptions that doctors have written for opioids since 2000 and between 2000 and 2015 tripled.
Wow.
And of course, they're writing prescriptions for everyone, all ages.
What is the county doing about this? What's their program?
Well, it is, as Don alluded to earlier, and as the Leggett administration begins to wind down, it is one of those things that the county executive and the council, I know, feel very deeply about. We want to do more in this area. So a few things we've done. One of the things that we've added, made sure that all of our EMTs have this drug. I'm drawing a blank on it. Narcan. Thank you. So many drugs in this area. Narcan. All of our EMTs have Narcan.
So if somebody's ODing, the Narcan's almost like a miracle drug to get them out of that OD in the
It
short
is
term.
a miracle drug. It's a nasal mist. It's easily administered, although you do have to learn how to administer very quickly. And it is, by the way, as of July 1st, 2017, available without a prescription from your local pharmacy. So that's one of the things we're doing. Our police are carrying this now. Our Department of Health and Human Services are training people on how to administer it. So that can miraculously save lives right away. So that's a critical. The other thing we're doing that's somewhat unique is we've joined a couple of other Maryland counties to sue some of the pharmaceutical companies. It sounds a little bit unusual, but that's what we're doing because of their marketing practices.
I guess these doctors, coming through the pill mills or they're all this overdose or over prescribing of these pills. Is there something? Have you seen anything that can be done about them?
Well, just in fairness to the hospitals and the docs who are doing the overprescribing, if you will, 10 years ago, well, maybe a little longer than that, 10, 12 years ago, they were being criticized for being insensitive to pain.
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure on them to do more to help people with their pain.
Right, and there was, if someone was recovering and needing to go through therapy, the therapy was painful after a hip or a knee, they're saying stay ahead of pain, you're going to have a better outcome if you're not in pain while you're trying to
We've got about 30
recover.
seconds left. Sum it up for us, and what do you think is going to be happening?
I think the most important thing right now, I would say, is for any resident that knows someone, family member, loved one, who may be having a problem with opioid addiction to seek help through some of our various resources. I think there's some being on the show now being broadcast, but especially to become familiar with the ability to apply this drug, life-saving drug that we have, Narcan.
And don't get hooked.
Don't get hooked in
Well,
the first
that's,
place. And don't be afraid to kind of press your physician a little bit on that.
that's right.
Chuck, thanks.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Elaine Apter.
Hi there.
Well, this is one of the issues I know that's in Annapolis, is how we're dealing, because this is a statewide and nationwide issue. But
Right.
on your agenda, as the League of Women Voters, in trying to make Maryland a better place, what do we have on your agenda?
Okay, well, we have three main areas. The first one is very league-like. It's voter access. And we are taking the lead in Maryland on redistricting and going for an independent redistricting commission. The key about this is it must be in place before the 2020 census when they redistrict again. So this is really a time-sensitive issue.
If you pull this off, amen, sister.
Well, we're working on it
when you-
very hard.
And when you say redistricting, is it to avoid gerrymandering?
Gerrymandering, yes.
Okay, so that's one.
Yeah,
Let's
one.
Let's get to all these and then we can talk about
Mitigating climate change, and this is another one that really is in the forefront right now, and we've had good and bad. Yesterday, Governor Hogan actually said he supported the Paris Accord, which is very positive. He's been positive on saying no to fracking. However, the federal government now has come down and allowed offshore drilling. So if this is something you really are opposed to, let the governor know. And that's what the league is, giving you information so that you can act and talk to your legislators.
So access, the environment, what's third?
Okay, the third is economic and social justice, housing, transportation, health, and I'll go right to transportation because I'm trying to stay basically where Montgomery County has its main interests. And the governor seemed to be swaying or talking more positively about dedicated funding for Metro. We don't know how, but at least that's a big step.
And they're tied into Virginia. I just read something about trying to cooperate with Northern Virginia on
Yes,
that.
yeah, and D.C.
Or the Virginia
all
legislature.
Three, all three, and D.C. legislature.
Right.
The other thing that's interesting that came up and got a lot of attention, but we haven't heard much about, is the governor's plan for the roads, especially making 495 around Montgomery County and 270 toll roads like they've done
Hot
in
lanes.
Virginia.
Oh my
hot lanes.
goodness!
So
I'll
but
avoid those
it's,
roads.
you know, traffic is a problem in Montgomery County.
Yes, indeed.
And so we have to look at ways.
So how do you go about promoting this agenda?
Okay, one of the things we have our priorities, we do lobbying, and the main thing, as I said before, is we want the public to become involved and know what's going on. So we do, during session, what we call Report from State Circle. It's on our website, and it will take the major areas, housing, education, climate, redistricting, and we'll talk about the bills that are coming through the legislature, and you can follow them. It tells you where the bill is at this point, what's happening to it, what are the major
Perfect.
articles in the bill, and so you can follow and tell your legislatures if you like it or don't.
Yeah, right.
And if one other, you mentioned education. I read also about the direction of the casino money, which was supposed to be directed at education, not to supplant what was already done, but to add.
Right.
And that's
There's no question about that.
Sleight of hand, huh?
I came from Florida, where the lottery was going to.
Well, that was here too.
Yeah, to be for more
money.
education over and above. And what happened is it supplanted and the budget went down. So all of these things are important for Montgomery County, for Maryland, and so we urge you to follow the legislation that's going on and let your legislators know.
What do you? I see the offshore drilling has become an issue. The Trump administration, excuse me. What do you see happening in Maryland? Are we going to have offshore drilling or not?
We, as voters, need to let Governor Hogan know, hopefully, that we do not want offshore drilling. You're talking about the Chesapeake Bay. And even, it's not only Maryland. We're talking anything would happen in Delaware, Virginia, Pennsylvania, anything like that will affect Marylanders as far as fishing and,
tourism and everything
tourism,
else.
everything.
And health.
So, this is something we really should get. If Florida can do it, we can do it.
And they got their pass on this. Listen,
Yes.
Elaine, I'm so glad you're leading the charge.
It's my pleasure. It's going to be an interesting session.
Look forward to hearing reports as the session goes on, and also at the end about your great successes.
Okay.
We'll have to take a break. We'll be right back. And we're back. I think as we film this, we're looking ahead to the Martin Luther King holiday birthday. We'll talk more about that with Fred in the final session. But I think about what the Reverend King did in terms of trying to build really a village of America, where we're all together and the quality of our heart and our spirit counting much more than how we were born and all that. And I think ages and ageism and aging in place, but also having young and old working together is the way the world is. And Trish, you're here to talk about how Rockville is helping to bring us in closer to the rest of the world, aren't you?
I am, and I'm happy to be here. I've been with the city of Rockville for a year, and since that time, although villages in the county have been thriving, we have a huge concentration of villages in the county, much more so than the rest of the country, which is exciting. Silver Spring, Bethesda, Potomac, they're everywhere, easily to be found. But the city of Rockville decided, hey, we want to do this within the city. And while aging in place sort of was the impetus for villages starting, there's been a few surprises. In that I see more families wanting to get involved when we have, grassroots meetings. It's young people, which I was pleasantly surprised. It's much more wholesome.
So tell me, from your position as facilitator, so you've got all the different wonderful neighborhoods in Rockville, and the idea of the village. Why don't you just briefly tell us what the original idea of the village is, and then how Rockville is taking it up to a different level.
Sure. The original idea was to have neighbor-to-neighbor support networks to help seniors stay in their homes without having to worry about having to call a stranger to come and do.
So as opposed to going to an assisted living,
exactly,
or just be institutionalized kind of.
Exactly.
So stay in a place where they're familiar, they like it, but they can't get around as much. So that's where they
can help with rides to the doctors and grocery stores and things like that. But I think that people are finding, couples with young children are saying, hey, I want my kids to see what this is all about, living in a connected world, like you said. In some ways it's global, but in other ways, in an area like we live in, it has to be more intentional.
Absolutely, because we're sent off to go be on our own. That's our whole purpose. That's what parents are doing. Get off, get away.
I've said to Trish before that this concept is one that I essentially in my neighborhood in Pittsburgh grew up with.
Right.
Next door neighbors, I walked into their home without having to knock on the door. And this is just a regeneration of that.
You do that here, and they're going to call the police.
Oh, yeah, right. Especially if I'm coming home.
Basically, how are they structured?
Well, Elaine, each one is different. There's a phrase in the village world: if you've seen one village, you've seen one village. It's been very overdone, so anyone who knows about villages is going to go, that's been done. But so it's dependent upon the culture, the mood, the vibe of a neighborhood, and what that specific needs of that neighborhood are. So one village is going to look, a big village like Potomac's Village, for example, has a big vast geography coverage, is going to look very different than a smaller community such as, Kensington or East Rockville or
Does each one have an individual coordinator? Who coordinates?
It's usually a grassroots core group, a steering committee, a board of directors, however they want to organize. My job is to hear what they're trying to do and get them the resources that I can, the materials, the templates, the idea, the bantering, the problem solving, and things like that.
And I know that the county government about 2 years ago also hired an expert, a coordinator who works with all of you all who are at the grassroots developing these villages, helping to bring the resources you need to help folks.
She is phenomenal. Her name is Pazit Aviv, and I think it's been more like 4 years, but she's done extraordinary work, and I can't help but think that that's why there is such a high concentration. If you look at a national map and villages were little dots, this area is heavily.
I should tell you, Trish, my
30 seconds left in this segment.
I live in the city of Rockville. I'm grateful for this and proud of it. My daughter and my grandchildren live in Rockville, and my grandchildren were recently trained by Interages to be part of the village system here in Rockville.
It's great.
It's awesome.
Where do you go from here? And what help do you need?
What help do I need? I need people to start talking. I need those conversations to get started in small neighborhoods, in big neighborhoods, and this is a great way to get the message out that this is a positive thing for all of us, for whether we live in the city or in the country or in the county. It's a great way to stay connected, and we all benefit from it.
Stay tuned. Trish, thank you, and I hope you'll be back.
Thank you. I would love to be. I would love to be.
Fred.
Don.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, as the spouse of an educator, she gets really excited about this weekend because it's a long it's an extended weekend coming right after that exhausting Christmas New Year break, and you've got a week in school, and then you got another break. Yeah. My heartstring, and so, but it's so much more, isn't it? The Martin Luther King break.
Oh yeah, let me just make this a little bit personal. I was a history teacher, and I was a history major in college, and had great professors and a great experience, learned a lot. But what I didn't learn was the richness of many different cultures, and be they my own background, which is ethnically Serbian, to especially the real history of African Americans in this country, from the dredges of slavery to the Civil War and afterwards. And our history training just didn't do that. We finally started to introduce that when I started teaching in the 70s, but we still have a long way to go. In 2003, as you mentioned, the Congress, United States Congress, established that we were going to set up a National Museum of African American History. In 2016, that was done. And it is an incredible facility. It has incredible information. It has just everything you would want to know about the pluses and the negative sides of African American history in the United States. And I think that it is so encouraging, and in recognition of this coming Monday or whenever the show shows,
Right.
Martin Luther King holiday, and what he was attempting to do in spite of all the things he had to face, I think we can get a lot of positiveness, if that's a word, out of it, because we are in a time where we're still battling
battling is right.
these issues.
Fred, you and I have something in common. Should I really say that publicly?
Yes, you should.
Own it.
Fred Evans
Own
is a
it,
great
Chuck.
thing.
That is a good friend. But I was a middle school history teacher as well, and you're absolutely right. I agree. We learned little and we taught little back in the 1960s when I was teaching. One of the things that Martin Luther King weekend does for me, and I think for our country, and I'm sure that I've not seen the museum yet, the museum does, is really celebrate the accomplishments
Exactly.
of the African American community. We never taught that. We taught about the Peanut and George Washington Carver, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe Jackie Robinson.
Right.
And
Maybe. But
Yeah.
really what we see every weekend in Rockville and all over this county and country are the wonderful artistic, cultural, academic, and many other contributions that African Americans
in
make
spite
to
of
this
the
country.
tremendous
Right.
roadblocks.
That's right. That's right.
And one of the hopes I hope to see with this wonderful facility here is that the schools are taking advantage,
Yes. Yeah,
they are.
and that they are able to go and
No question.
see the museum.
Exactly.
And it's not, this is not an issue, and I hesitate to say this in some ways, but it's not an issue that's going to be resolved in one day or one visit. We need to continually build on it. We need to continually improve our curriculum to make it more realistic and real.
I think coming out, I've spent a lot of time there at the museum, and you come in, you start in the darkness of the middle passage
Yes.
and then you work your way up and through the history of light, and it's all the symbolism and great displays and everything else. But I think today, especially as we've seen the hatred and division, and the seeming trying to just wipe out all reference
Yes.
to any accomplishments that our first African American president had by his successor president, is that we have so far to go.
Yes, we do.
And working together, whether it's in your villages or the county executive, first African American county executive, and is in the league working on in the schools is how can we get in and address our own shortcomings and invite people in our homes, in our hearts of addressing the horrors of African American history from back and celebrating. It's a complicated,
Yes, it is.
like life is, but it's a daily. For me, it's a daily thing that each of us has to deal with, not to dwell on and make our lives all go somber, but it's something we just need to be working on. I know you do this. I know you've been talking about this, and you talk about this today as well.
Yeah, it's very important. I was looking at the website. There's a Nat Turner's Bible that they found. That it's an artifact now and there where he was keeping notes on his rebellion. Now that wasn't a very pleasant rebellion, but he was a slave in Virginia, and he was captured
About 10 seconds.
at the age of 31, and then
Right.
but those kinds of things that we have to learn from.
Remind us.
I think Hollywood is making some inroads as well.
That's our last word.
Oh,
Most appropriate.
Hollywood, yeah.
Hooray for Hollywood!
You all, thank you for making our little village a success today. And I want to thank all of you in the greater Montgomery County and viewing audience village for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Weekend Review. I'm Don Moores, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.